Hey there, are you a solopreneur who has more work than they can handle? Well, if you've answered yes to that question, then this video is one you're going to want to stick around for. In today's training, we're going to help you to identify the 10 steps you should do before hiring your first employee. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Step number 1, analyze your product market fit. Now, by definition, product market fit is essentially the degree to which a product or service meets a strong market demand. So product market fit generally has a few different types of indicators that can help give you an idea of where you might be on the spectrum. Most of the time, it's based around clients, their behavior, and their relationship with your business. The first is acquisition. Can you easily acquire clients on a repeatable and regular basis? Next is retention. When you do acquire them, do they stay around for the long term and do they continue to pay you? You know, we all love referrals, and referrals are a strong indicator of product market fit because you don't have to pay to acquire the lead and they come in without you having to do too much work. So if you have referrals, might be a good indicator of product market fit. Next is market size. Do you have a big enough market size to rinse, wash, and repeat what you've already demonstrated you could do on a smaller scale? And last but not least is conversion ability. Can you turn interest into cash on a repeatable basis? In my opinion, this is the most important step to consider, and you'll definitely want to spend some time here. Step number 2, prepare your cash reserves. Now, oftentimes, most solopreneurs base their ability to pay staff on monthly cash flow confidence. I'm here to tell you, that's not quite enough. In addition to monthly cash flow, we should also have cash reserves in the bank for each employee that we plan to hire. Generally, and if possible, 3 to 6 months of not only salary, but also benefits would be ideal. Now look, I know this is a lot to ask, but if you implement this strategy, it could protect you against unforeseen layoffs due to low cash flow months. Step number 3, maximize your technology usage. Now I gotta tell you up front, this is gonna be short and to the point. Here's the big question you should be asking yourself as a solopreneur. For the work that I'm about to hire someone to do, can a piece of technology do it for me without involving a person? This doesn't work for every single scenario, but oftentimes the answer is yes, especially if you look deep enough. CRM systems, marketing automation, call centers, there's all types of stuff out there that you can actually use, right? So you just want to make sure to maximize your technology usage before adding the human element. I guarantee you, it will save you probably 90% of what you were looking to spend from a salary to a subscription perspective. So this is something that people skip over, but you should definitely take a look at. Step number 4, identify all employment types. Now, traditional employees aren't the only way to get consistent help. There are also contractors, freelancers, temp workers, seasonal workers, and so on. Knowing the full scope of employment types will give you the maximum freedom and safety to determine who is the right hire for you. Step number 5, define your location requirements. The cool thing about the internet is that the workforce is now truly global, and that means you don't have to limit your hiring search to people that are closest to you. The obvious idea here is digital work and the ability to hire remote workers. But what's also not so obvious is the non-digital work. How do you account and compensate for that type of work outside of your geographical location? So here's a few examples that are related to certain industries that you might think, hey, I need people, right? But there's actually alternative solutions. So the first is manufacturing, right? If you run a company that actually makes stuff, you're like, hey, I gotta have people in my factory, in my shop. Well, that's actually not true. You could potentially outsource that work to a factory domestically or abroad. The next is communications. What if you need to hire someone to communicate with clients or prospects? Well, you could also outsource that to a call center that may have a higher grade and quality of people that could communicate better than maybe some of the people that you can find locally. And last but not least is food services. I've personally been to restaurants where they are now using robots to take food from the kitchen to the table. So these are just a few applications of what you might be able to do and how you can avoid hiring someone and save some money. Step number 6, evaluate your readiness to share space. Now here's the truth. Bringing someone into your work environment that did not exist there before can be a lot. Most of us don't even talk about this in the entrepreneurial community because many of us never make it to the point to where we need to even thinking about hiring someone else. Nonetheless, it's incredibly important. You know, when you bring that first hire into your work environment, whether it's physical, which is going to be really where everything is amplified, or even virtual like Slack environments or Microsoft Teams, There's going to be a new set of requests and culture, communication differences, and ways of doing things that you're going to have to get used to, and they're going to also have to get used to you. So if this is not planned out in advance and you're not honest with yourself about what you will accept and what you won't accept the same way they have to do, then there may be a chance for friction, and we don't want that. So I would just recommend for you to really sit down and think about these things, and also determine, are you ready to bend and be accommodating and to be a little bit more selfless than maybe you have had to be in the past, because that's what it's actually going to take to have a successful relationship with your first new hire in your working environment. Step number 7, outline your company culture and values. Culture is a way of doing something, and values loosely means what you stand for. So here's my big question to you as a solopreneur. Have you thought about your company culture or the values that you stand for from a corporate perspective? There's a big chance that the answer is no, because as solopreneurs, we're trying to survive and trying to do everything ourselves. So big abstract strategies that are normally reserved for big companies, we don't pay attention to. But at this particular time, if you're thinking about bringing on your first employee, you must now start to think like a big company, because now you're bringing a new person into your organization that could take it positively forward or negatively backward. And a lot of times that is silently kind of based on a lack of establishment of cultures and values. So you want to make sure to think about these things, write them down. Look at big companies like Netflix, Starbucks, Walmart, Apple. All of these companies have gotten it right. HubSpot, they've all done it right, and they can give you the cheat sheet to distill it down to what you want for yourself and for your organization. So I highly recommend doing this before you hire your first employee. Step number 8, clarify the job offer and benefits. Let me ask you a question. Have you already identified how much you can actually pay your first employee? Have you thought about the additional and sometimes silent costs of their benefits package? What about travel and reimbursement? Have you thought about the full landscape of what they will cost and what they will expect? Oftentimes, solopreneurs that have never hired before, naturally so, haven't thought about these things. So you want to make sure to have these things in place before you have your first conversations, because I guarantee you, candidates will ask, and it might be the first question that they ask you. So you just don't want to be caught off guard, and you want to make sure to have at least these 3 to 4 things covered at a loose level to give them an idea, so that when they go home and walk away, they have confidence and some idea of what they might be getting themselves into. Step number 9, implement risk mitigation strategies. Here's the truth. It's much easier to hire someone than to let them go. And the only way to do this safely for both parties is to think about the worst case scenarios in advance. Generally, there's the beginning of the relationship, the middle, and the end. But the ones that folks don't quite get right is the beginning and the end. So I want to give you 2 simple strategies to implement right now where you can protect yourself on the front and the backside. The first one is a probationary period. It's essentially a time of assessment, normally 30 to 90 days, where you can evaluate the candidate and help to understand what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and if they could be a good fit. And they also have the ability to do that with you in your company as well. Now, the second thing that you'll want to implement in your agreement is something called a mutual departure. And essentially, this is like a soft exit clause, which clearly outlines how you all will part ways in the event that that needs to happen. So basically, both of you will have the option to provide some type of heads up. Hey, this is not quite working out. Normally a notification of 30 or 60 days notice. You as the employer will actually receive all the work that was promised, and them as the employee will actually receive all their pay, salary, and benefits. And then after that period of time, you'll be able to split amicably with minimal risk. So these are just a few risk mitigation strategies that you can implement for your first employee. Step number 10, know key employment law and tax requirements. I want to give you 2 examples here that clearly articulate what I mean. The first is knowing employment types, right? This has to do with the law. The difference between contractors and employees. Oftentimes, even if our intentions are positive and innocent, solopreneurs can get into hot water because sometimes we'll treat a contractor the same way that we would intend to treat an employee. And in many jurisdictions, you can't do that. Contractors are more of free beings, and many of them are self-employed, so we cannot dictate the who, what, where, why, when, and how of the way work gets done. But with employees, we can. So that's an example of you really need to know the law for your province, your state, or your country in terms of how you can work with contractors versus employees and the other employment types. Now, moving to accounting and finance. Most jurisdictions have a requirement where you must contribute to the social welfare and benefit system on behalf of your employees so that they can redeem the benefits later. If you don't do this, it can be trouble for everyone. Trouble for you from the government in terms of fines and penalties and putting you on a particular list. And then for your employees, they will not be able to go and use the services that they were expecting to use in critical times of need, like health services or dental services, etc. And so what we want to make sure of is we want to understand the legal requirements of having employees as well as the accounting and financial requirements to make sure that we're in alignment and making everyone involved very happy. Now, I want to share this with you. I just touched the tip of the iceberg, right? It gets way more complicated than this. So what I recommend you do is either talk to your attorney and or talk to your accountant to get the professional advice in your particular area of business. So that concludes today's training on the 10 steps you should implement and execute before you make your first hire. I want to thank you so much for investing the time and watching this video. Hopefully you picked up 1 or 2 gems that might help you in preparation for this next major and special entrepreneurial event. And we can't wait to hear your new hire success story. My name is Desmond, founder of the Entrepreneurship Center, and we're looking forward to seeing you very soon.